show. I'm your host, Kevin Cagley, and I like craft beer. In fact, that's what this show is about. Specifically, it's about how science and good data can help craft brewers sell more beer by way of branding and great packaging design. And hopefully good beer. I got to talk to CODO Design co-founders Arthur and Cody Fague about a recent study they conducted using eye tracking technology. Data is the point of truth when it comes to packaging design, and their goal was to get solid metrics to help determine beer branding trends for 2020. This interview was so dense with information, I wasn't able to put it all in this episode, but I did put some helpful links in the description below, so please check that out. And hey, while you're here, go ahead and like this video, leave a comment, that would be great, and please subscribe to this channel. That way you'll know what's happening in the world of the packaging industry. So if you're interested in craft beer as a consumer or even a brewer, grab a cold one and enjoy this episode. I would, but it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, Isaac, Cody, thank you guys so much for taking a few moments out of your day to meet with us on the Packaging School Show. Very delighted to talk to you guys. Specifically, we're going to be talking craft beer today. I like craft beer. I guess you guys probably like it. I don't think you'd be opposed to it. But so if you could, before we jump into all this, can you give us and our viewers a little background? Like, how long have you been around? I've heard if you can eat it or drink it, you guys have probably branded it.
For sure. Cody and we met in college in 2006. I'll kind of fast forward here. I'll save you all the propaganda. We decided to open CODO right after graduation. So we graduated in 2009, started CODO in 2009, landed our first brewery client in 2010, and we've worked with over 50 now. It's like 52 if you want the real number, but we've worked with over 50 breweries over the last 9 years, I guess it would be, working in this space. And so we've worked really, and that tracks the growth of the industry, because Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, I always flood these numbers a little bit. In the year 2000, there were 1,500 breweries. In the year 2010, there were 1,800. So that's not much growth. That's 300 breweries in a decade. From 2010 to 2020, taking out what's happening right now, of course, the pandemic, there are now 8,300 breweries in the country. So it's just like a straight hockey stick line straight up. And CODO was very fortunate to get into that space. It was a little by design. It was a little bit by luck. It was a little bit by passion, because we were always home brewing and drinking and fans of beer, still fans of beer to this day. And just kind of worked out to where we became really embedded in that space, working with breweries and planning initially. And then over the last couple of years, as the industry has matured, more brewery rebrands. Cody, I feel like I just rambled for a long time. Is that anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty accurate. We just got really lucky at a time when, particularly locally, but then nationally after that, people were sort of coalescing around locally produced food and beverage. And a lot of that focus came down on craft beer, and a lot of that ethos was wrapped up in being able to buy a better product for cheaper from a guy that you know, or from a woman that you know. So we were right there, and we got to kind of ride that up with everyone else.
Recently, you guys wrapped up a project with our sister company, Package Insight, where you guys used some pretty cool technology, used some eye tracking technology to do the study. I think it was a 2020 craft beer branding and packaging trends. That's what you're moving towards. What were some of your biggest takeaways from that, and did anything surprise you?
A lot of it surprised us, actually. I mean, I think about, I'll start, Cody, with the one that we and everyone in our industry, if you're a designer, Kevin, you probably have as well. You always talk about time to, I guess the technical metric would be time to find. Is that right, Cody? Like how fast your eye tracks something. We're always touting, look how this thing right here jumps off on shelf. And it turns out that doesn't actually mean that it's going to sell at all. In fact, it is like not an indicator in one bit. When you look at, what is it, total time looking at, like total gaze, and then I've already forgotten it. It's like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I mean a lot of data. Yeah. That was really surprising. And then Cody, maybe you can speak to some of the trends, because we've always we've always done it. We've now gone on. This is our 5th year of writing these major kind of branding trends pieces, and a lot of the things that we would have thought would sell really well, because we're so immersed in this and we're navel gazing maybe to a bit, didn't really sell that well. So, Cody, what did you think?
I think so the time to locate thing that Isaac just mentioned was probably the most surprising thing, but there were quite a few others that at least made me raise an eyebrow when we started to get the numbers back. To talk a little bit about the study, we were having people come into a craft beer bottle shop in Greenville, South Carolina, and the purpose of that was to track, like, what would people buy, how long would they look at the various items on the shelf, et cetera, et cetera. Isaac and I sort of talked about us coming up alongside the craft beer industry. And one of the things that we've seen develop probably over the last 5 years or so is the shift from kind of a standard 12-ounce can that's pre-printed with a logo real big, kind of the way like Coors or Miller Lite does it, to these 16-ounce cans that have a pressure-sensitive label applied that are basically just canvases for any and all type of artwork. Mm-hmm. Those beers initially, at least, were almost exclusively like hazy IPAs, double India pale ales, big beers, rare kind of specialty beers where you might run them off every couple weeks. That's since exploded into sours and fruited beers and all kinds of other experimental wild things. Because of who I associate with those beers, and this probably says more about me and my preconceived notions, but I have a very set idea in my head of like who a craft beer nerd is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. It's like a dude with tortoiseshell glasses and a beard and a cool vest or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Man bun too.
Yeah, exactly. Rocking the high end, the high knot. But what we were seeing from this study is that format, that 16-ounce, like heavily illustrated piece of artwork on a big IPA or a sour or XYZ, go down the line, sold really well to everyone. Gender did not matter. Age did not matter. Education, profession, whether you're married, did not matter. Everyone was buying those things. And those were by and far the most successful, meaning the most people purchased the same SKUs over and over of the study. Surprised me a little bit, checked my preconceived notions quite a bit. So humbling in that regard. But yeah, that was something that really stood out to me.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think it's not that craft beer nerd? Because I actually dropped by there. That was a Greenville Beer Exchange. Mm-hmm. I walked around a bit. I took some photos, and there was a mom in there with her kid. I mean, the whole demographic has changed. I feel like there was a mom in there with her kid. She was shopping. There was an older woman. There were a couple of college guys. I mean, it was everybody. And like you said, they were eyeballing those heavily illustrated big cans. But so why do you think that is? How is it such mass appeal?
I would be really curious to hear what Isaac thinks about this too, but I'll go ahead and answer first. I think that at some point between when breweries started doing this, a lot of times they're doing it just out of like cost necessity, because it's too expensive to have 12 pallets of pre-printed cans that you don't know if you're going to be able to sell them all, because the market's so wishy-washy and people always want to try something new, and you don't want to be sitting on that inventory that might just be dead money taking up space in your warehousing. So people started doing this, and I think at some point there was a transition from people were doing it out of necessity to all the cool breweries were doing it, all the cool, desirable experimental beer styles were showing up in that format. All of a sudden, now the consumers learned that's what to look for if I want that type of beer. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, and Isaac's used the word canon, I think that sums it up really well, that has become the canon look for cool, one-off, hard to find, potentially expressive, creative, experimental craft beer. And I think people know that now, and they look for it, and it doesn't matter who you are. You've just gleaned that by, paying attention to the culture. I don't know. Isaac, what do you think about that?
I would just add that I think it has become representative of craft itself. It really speaks to this, whether or not the beer is a special one-off whale kind of thing. people tend to look for that because that is what craft beer looks like in 2020. Even though there's a million other examples that don't look like that, that is a very quick index for what it looks like. The example we gave, and this is funny, this actually rustled a lot of feathers. Like the only kind of negative stuff people were talking about, they're like, oh, you're saying pressure sensitive is a design trend? It's like, well, I understand what you're saying. It's done out of necessity. It's done because you don't have a repeat brewing schedule, obviously. But we found there's this funny example that we found a couple of years ago of Sam Adams, New England hazy IPA, whatever they call it, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Boston Beers. It's one of the biggest brewing, I mean, literally like the first or second largest brewery in the world, beyond, the big 3 or 4. And they had printed their can to look like it was a bright can with a label on it. Like they printed probably 10 million of the cans to look like this thing that other breweries are doing because out of necessity. And it's just like a restaurant group, like the Chipotle aesthetic looks like it does because they started out really raw and showing materiality. And that became a beautiful aesthetic and a way to talk about how we're just showcasing ingredients and quality more than like, pomp and circumstance. And it's like spending a lot of money, a restaurant group, to get that same effect. Like I'm rambling now, but it is just interesting that it has now become, I'll use the word again, a canon for craft beer. That is what craft beer looks like today.
As we wrap up here, do you have any advice? Is there anything that you can share from over a decade of experience with like a startup craft brewery, something that you might just impart to them before they take the plunge?
This isn't very sexy, but I think the idea of positioning is extremely important and overlooked by almost any business in any industry on the planet. A lot of people try to be generalists, and you see that in beer too. There's nothing wrong with making a good porter, a good pale, a good X, Y, and Z. But if you can have a very clear understanding of what you do well, and hopefully that intersects with what you get paid to do really well and what you're passionate about, if those 3 things kind of align, that's like the secret of business. Yeah. Then you can do something really special and your fans will love it. I think that positioning is the big one that we always push people to do. If you're a 40-year-old brewery, if you're a 3-year-old brewery, if you're a startup brewery. The other one would be, Cody, brand values. Probably, I think that's kind of a thing that people now today know. That's like a very commonplace thing, but still people are always talking about, we need to make quality beer and have great service and be enmeshed in our local community. And it's like, that's fine. Those are table stakes. You need to understand really why you run your business the way you do. Why do you brew the beer that you brew? Why do you exist? What role do you play in your community and your people's lives? If you can understand those kind of back of house upstream things, and assuming the beer's good and the service is good and you're always striving to improve, everything else will take care of itself. But don't gloss over, we would call it, the 3 of us would call it strategy, but really it's not so much just a thing that lives on a brief and goes in a drawer. I mean, these are why you exist in a lot of ways. So I would push people to think of those before designing a logo or packaging or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Cody?
I would just echo and kind of put an underline under what Isaac just said there, that when you're thinking about what you want to stand for as a company, when you're thinking about what you want to make, what you want to be known for, try to push past the things that obviously everyone's going to say, because everyone is saying it and you're not actually going to be known for those things because that's what everybody else is trying to own too. So what are the things that are immutably yours? Not necessarily better, we say all the time, just different than what other people are doing. And really try to own that and make sure that that gets through to your logo design, your packaging, how you talk to customers when they come in the door, everything. Because if without that, you don't have much, especially with so many people in the game now.
Yeah. It's like if you take care of the primary, the secondary is going to take care of itself. I think that's just valuable information. And I know in this interview we could have gotten into trends and for 2020, but we're going to point people to those things. You guys have a lot of that information on your site, so there'll be lots of links in the description of this video. So just in closing, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for making people look their best. And thanks for working on craft beer, because I like it.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
The whole experience, a lot of fun. All right. Well, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
See you, Kevin.
See ya. Many, many thanks to Isaac and Cody and everyone at CODO Designs. And remember, I wasn't able to put this whole interview here, so I'm going to release it in a few days, so keep your ears to the ground. We'll keep you posted. Don't forget to check out the links in the description below. You will not be sorry. And always remember, keep calm, carry on, and wash your hands. We'll see you next time.